welcome to this episode of the Skiff Meetings podcast. My name is Miguel Neves and I am the editor-in-chief of Skiff Meetings. And on this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Andrea Cadotto, the Director of Sales of Visit Detroit. Here are a few reasons why you want to listen to this episode. Andrea shares her experience of managing events with large, actually unlimited budgets, and also her experience in being involved in major local events like the recent NFL Draft, which had 750,000 people attend over 3 days. She talks about the legacy that Visit Detroit has as the first visitors and convention bureau and how it brings that immense experience and a culture of innovation to the work that the team does every day. She talks about the significant positive changes that Detroit has experienced over the past decade. We cover some of the new hotel openings, such as the Godfrey Hotel, the Cambria Hotel, and the upcoming new hotel that will be built attached to the Huntington Place Convention Center. And finally, we talk about the strong community involvement, and she invites all planners to experience Detroit firsthand and discover the city's offerings. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and don't forget to check out the other episodes of the Skiff Meetings podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening. Detroit has always been America's assembly line of creativity and innovation. It's home to groundbreakers, movers and shakers, the next generation that will change the nation. Bring your meeting to Detroit, then take it all in. Award-winning dining, a captivating live music scene, and world-class outdoor spaces like America's top Riverwalk, as ranked by USA Today. This is your invitation to join America's true originals. Plan your meeting in Detroit. Get started at visitdetroit.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Skiff Meetings podcast. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Andrea Cadotto, the Director of Sales of Visit Detroit. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Miguel. Appreciate it. Look forward to speaking with you today.
Well, thank you to you and to Visit Detroit for sponsoring this episode of the podcast and this month. So I do appreciate that. But I'd love to start really where we start all our podcast episodes by kind of getting the guests to introduce themselves. So I'd love you to talk to us a little bit about your career. And I'd like to start by the kind of your first connection with business events, your first connection with conferences, events. Where did that start?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Well, my first interaction started back in college. I went to college for a hospitality business events degree. And I remember in the very first session, they said, hey, we think that as students, you should go and get jobs in hotels because you want to be in events. And I did. I went to the local hotel. They put me in this really beautiful uniform with a bow tie and a really long skirt, and told me that I was going to answer phones for the next 3 to 6 months. And I left there and I said, nope, that is not for me. That's not what I want to do. So I went back and I changed my degree to marketing and communications and kind of came on the flip side. I got that degree and came in as a salesperson and have never looked back. So I worked for, since 1998, so over 25 years in the hospitality industry. I spent a majority of that in hotel sales, both as an on-site hotel salesperson and then a regional. And then I made the move back to the Metro Detroit area because I knew that this was home and where I wanted to be. And about 2 years into that, I was recruited to come and work for Visit Detroit. So it's been a great ride. I've been with Visit Detroit now for 12 years.
That's great. Would love to kind of take you back to kind of those initial moments and that initial kind of perception of the industry. And could you just take us through the perception of the industry, how that's changed from that initial contact point to today?
Oh, absolutely. I think when I was first starting in the business, that was it. You only knew that you could go and you could work in a hotel. And that's what being in meetings and events and hospitality really meant. And it wasn't until I began, getting into my career and really getting involved with organizations like Meeting Professionals International and Society of Government Meeting Professionals and at the local level, the Michigan Society of Association Executives, that I realized that there was so much more depth to the events industry. And that's where you really begin to network and understand that it's more than just booking hotel rooms.
Yeah, exactly. So you've obviously been part of organizing, selling, in many different ways of many different events. Do you have any highlights, any events that you think are like the ones that you'd like to tell your family and friends about?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the best part about this industry is I always say I know a little about a lot of industries, right? It's amazing that there are events for everything. It's always impressive to see how an event goes from information on an RFP to actually, live and in person. One of my favorites was my first international group that I ever worked with. Some may be familiar with it. It's Alibaba. And it was the first event that ever came to me and said, "We have an unlimited budget." And that was probably the most fun to see what an unlimited budget event looked like. And it was spectacular. When you have an unlimited budget, you can literally hang people from anywhere. So, very exciting event, very interesting to do. But I think the other part, particularly about being with Visit Detroit, is the events we get to do that we have the ability to participate in. And I think none are more spectacular than probably the most recent, which is the NFL draft. We host events regularly and annually, like the Detroit Grand Prix, movement festival, jazz festival. So moving outside of your traditional trade show and events, it's amazing to see how a city and a region comes together to put on organizations like the NFL coming together with a city to put on the draft. It's pretty amazing.
Congratulations on that event. So, Visit Detroit was founded in 1896. I
Yeah.
believe you're the first convention and visitors bureau in the world. Does that
Yeah.
give you an edge over the other ones? You were there first. How do you see that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is not the only thing Detroit was first at. We've been the first of many. The first stoplight, the first paved road, and currently now the first electric quarter mile. So always being an innovator in this space. What does that allow us? Experience, history, experience, coming from a culture of try anything, be cutting edge, take risks. So we have amazing people who have been with this organization for a very long time who bring a great deal of industry knowledge and experience, not only for Detroit, but for all of the events that they do. So I think that's probably what we bring to the table most is just our longevity and experience.
I think that's always very valid. Now, Detroit is a city that's gone through big transformations in the last few years. I remember personally running an event in Detroit at the Renaissance Center in 2009, I believe. And that was a different city. It's a city in evolution very much. And I think it's evolved very rapidly and in very different ways. So would love to get your take on what that means, like how you saw the evolution of Detroit in the last 10, 20 years, but also what that means for meetings and events.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, seeing the evolution of Detroit has been just astounding. When I first decided that I was moving back to the Detroit area, people were like, "Really? Are you sure?" And this was, 12, 14 years ago. And then when I said, I'm going to represent Detroit, I'm going to work for Visit Detroit, I had friends in the industry that were like, "Are you sure? What's happening?" And you could see it even a decade or so ago, you could see the transformation starting. And I remember believing, no, it's going to be amazing. I can see it happening. I used to drive in every morning, right? Back when we all used to have to come to the office every day. And there were definitely areas of the city that gave you pause. And then over the course of time, you'd be driving in again and you're like, wow, you see the growth, you see what's happening around you. And you know that that has to do with the business that's coming in, the events that you're doing, because you're providing an economic impact to the residents. You're providing jobs. If we don't sell, people don't work. And that's an important takeaway, I think, for not only our organization, but many that are involved in making sure that the region is successful. There's been some, again, major milestones. We would be remiss if we said we were we were also the first city to ever file bankruptcy. And, that was not a shining light for the city at the time. But in hindsight, I think it was probably one of the best moves uh, our destination ever did. It really allowed us to have a clean slate and take a look at the assets we have in the region, and allowed investment, both private, public, governmental, to come in and really catapult the city into the trajectory that it is. We would be remiss if we ever indicated that it's not solely the result of the efforts of Visit Detroit, but a collaboration of a lot of people from the state level all the way down. And what that means for events is we've been building and enhancing the infrastructure in our city, enhancing our convention centers, improving our airport and our airlift, ensuring the transportation ecosystem supports events, as well as driving additional hotels, renovations, growth, restaurants, dining. All of that investment just adds to the economic structure of what it takes to actually host an event in your city. Um, Once we got to that level where we knew we had all of the actual assets, what you have now is a community that comes together to be collaborative, to be innovative, to be entrepreneurs, to really support the efforts because they understand the importance of Detroit being successful, of the region being successful, and what that means to our local residents.
Well, that's an amazing story to hear, and I look forward to digging into this a little bit further. Would like to get your take on what's new, because one of the things we cover a lot on Skiff meetings is this idea of what's new at a destination, because it's easy to find the hotels that are open, etc. But what just opened, what's coming up? Can you give us a little bit of a summary of kind of what you're excited about?
Yeah. Ooh, there's so much. This might take the whole hour. No, the hotel development in the region is going well. Of course, we just opened the Godfrey Hotel, the Cambria Hotel. We are looking forward to the opening of the Addition, which is on the site of it. We call it the Hudson site. For those of you that are old enough to remember the Hudson department store, that had a location in our downtown core for many, many years, and then sat vacant for many years. And now will be home to the second tallest building in our downtown skyline, offering just a new look and a new phase to the city. We are also opening a new hotel. We have put a shovel in the ground. More details to come on that. I don't have all of those to share just yet. And probably the most exciting that has just happened as of June 6th was the reopening of Michigan Central Station. There is no building in our downtown core that is more iconic or has been more photographed than the train station. It had been abandoned for several years, and in the last couple of years, Ford Automotive Company had purchased it, has put millions of dollars into restoring it to its original beauty. And it's now going to be the home of their autonomous vehicle research, as well as with City Lab, a collaboration amongst really people all over the world who are going to be looking at the most challenging opportunities for mobility. And so that just brings a whole new audience to our city. It really sheds a light on the human capital we have, the intelligence that's in the city, and how we can help be a first again in the future of mobility. And if you did not catch the opening, I highly encourage you to check it out on Paramount Plus, NBC Paramount Plus. It is streaming there, and it's pretty amazing. It was quite
Fascinating.
the opening.
So you mentioned this new hotel, and I believe that's opening next to the convention center, right, or attached to the
It
convention
is.
center. Yeah.
It is early 2027. Yes.
And you mentioned it's the second tallest building in the Detroit skyline. Would the first be the Renaissance Center? Am I getting that wrong?
Ooh, let me clarify. Yeah. So the Detroit Marriott at the Renaissance Center, yes, is the tallest building in our skyline. It is home to General Motors headquarters. The second tallest will be the Hudson site. And actually, it's just been announced recently that GM will be moving their headquarters to that location. So there's a lot of excitement around what the skyline is going to look like, the riverfront, the expansion. I would be remiss if I said we had the #1 river walk in the US for 3 or 4 years in a row. So certainly we're seeing the hotel attached to the convention center. We don't really have all of the details to share just yet, but it will be a great addition to our hotel package for sure.
And that is which convention center? Huntington Place?
Huntington Place. Yes, that's great to point out. One of the things that many people don't realize about the Detroit region is we represent a tri-county area, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County. And Huntington Place Convention Center, which has over 1 million square feet of space, 16th largest convention center, sits in Wayne County in downtown Detroit. We have an additional convention center, which is Suburban Collection Show Place, has over 500,000 square feet of space and resides in Oakland County. So we're very, very fortunate to have two centers because it offers a lot of flexibility to our guests, depending on what they're looking for.
Now, I think your total room count in the city is 42,000, but there's quite a collection of those in the downtown area, right?
That is correct. Yeah, the 42,000 plus, we might even be at 44,000 plus. That's because of the representation of the Tri-County area. In the downtown core, yes, we have nearly 5,500. With the addition, we're getting closer to a little over 6,000 and growing. And so this offers us just even more opportunity to attract larger events and showcase the city in a bigger and better way.
And I know you're hosting PCMA EduCon towards the end of the month, I believe, right?
We are. We're welcoming them June 23rd through the 26th. And they're at, I believe, nearly 1,000 attendees. And very excited because that's another 1,000 people that we're introducing to the city that may or may not have been.
Excellent. And you have the Delta hub also helps get people in and out, especially the international crowd. So that's always a nice bonus to the city.
Absolutely, absolutely. Delta has been huge. Delta, the international transit between here, the UK, France, it's been exceptional because there's an entire another component in addition to meetings and conventions, which we've been very successful in attracting international events, but the leisure travel, there's no doubt that that plays a significant role. Bleisure, we've all heard it, we've all talked about it, and it's a real thing where people are looking for destinations that they can explore both personally and professionally.
Well, let's talk about the human capital. I think you brought that up, and I think that's a very interesting topic. You mentioned the headquarters of these big companies based in Detroit or with big offices in Detroit, kind of at the hotels and close to the convention center. So you have this corporate business center there, also kind of feeding meetings and conventions. Now, human capital, very big in Detroit. You have all this knowledge, all these engineers, all these people making things. You have music, you have Motown and techno and lots of kind of movements that started in Detroit. And you also have this wonderful architecture, and this Art Deco, particularly Detroit's famous for. I know that's a lot of different areas, but I really wanted to get your take on how that helps with meetings and events, beyond there's some nice buildings, but how do you bring that into the kind of offers that you make for meetings and events and then actually putting those together for the meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. That is a lot. And that's what we always say is we have a lot to offer. It's really about identifying what makes the most sense for each organization. When it comes to the brain trust and the human capital that we have, there's no doubt that Detroit is known as the automotive capital of the world. But what does that really mean? Is it means that not only do you have the big three like GM, Ford, Stellantis, but we have over 40 plus original equipment manufacturers. We have two major universities that are very well versed in the engineering sector. The amount of intelligence that belongs in this area to support those big three. One of the things that people are always very shocked about is in the technology area, you have all of these companies, but each one of them has a very significant footprint in tech because of this push to mobility. And so that research is done here at ground zero, really. And that offers organizations, their sponsorship money. from organizations that are local. There's keynote speakers, there's panelists, supporters, and then you have this built-in drivable attendance where, depending on what audience you're trying to attract, it's very easy to get to Detroit both during flight and driving. I think you can get to 90%, 60% of the US in under 4 hours driving. That's pretty amazing. So it makes us a really great access point for events. When it comes to the music, the art deco, and just what the community brings, we have found amazing ways to weave this into events, really. Many opening sessions involve some sort of Detroit music. We cut the vibe, right? You're trying to create you're coming here, you can go anywhere. You can hold your event anywhere, but why is it important to hold it in Detroit? I think that's about figuring out what message you're trying to send to your attendees. And most often, people are no longer interested in just coming to an event or having to go to an event and just obtain information. They want experiences. And so we take all of those assets, our museums, our attractions, our music, our food, our culture, and we help you weave that into your event, whether that's music for your walk-on, music for your opening, DJs in the morning. How do you infuse that vibe into your event? And then certainly most events are looking to build tours, right? Now, maybe a pre or post event tour where people do want to get out and explore. We do an amazing architectural tour. People who are not familiar would be very shocked to see the arts and culture throughout the city. The murals are internationally known and represented, and it's an amazing tour. So we just try to find the right pieces to the puzzle to make sure that your event has a little bit of Detroit flavor in it.
And just leading on from that, how do you make sure that the local communities, the Detroit kind of community really benefits the most from the meetings and events that come to Detroit?
Yeah, well, that is certainly a collaborative effort. Media is certainly important. We have excellent relationships with our local media representatives who are very keen to showcase and highlight major events that are going on, but also to attend our trade shows and events to give them the exposure that helps drive traffic attendance and generate interest in their shows, as well as communication. Our services team, our marketing team do an excellent job of communicating to our stakeholders and our partners. And that happens in a variety of ways. But it's really something that I'm not sure anyone can really put to paper. Detroit just has a community that cares. It is their city. You are in their home. They're happy to have you and they're looking for ways to support you because they know that it's reciprocal. And so I think that, we're just very fortunate to have a community that cares, a community both from the business to the residential. People care when you're in their city. I think most of my clients are always very shocked. They're like, everyone is so friendly. Everyone wants to help. So and so told me a story about, their time in Detroit. People live here. They live here, they work here, they play here, and they want others to see what they know is true. So they're excited to show it off.
A community that cares is an excellent host for events, I would imagine.
It is. It is.
And you mentioned a few of these kind of big iconic events. Could you highlight a few that are really, I guess, putting Detroit on the meetings and conventions map or keeping it there?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know that we knew what the impact would be of hosting an event like the NFL draft. I am personally very thankful for the exposure that gave the city because for anyone who had any questions, thoughts, concerns about Detroit's ability to host large events, that was the largest, setting records for that 750,000 strong in the city, having just an excellent time. And for anybody who's never been to the NFL draft, coolest event I've ever been to. Everybody's there to have a good time, and the outfits are amazing. So I would say NFL draft certainly was a catalyst for that, but I think it also goes to just the momentum of everything we've been doing. We've been hosting successful meetings, events, and trade shows for years, and I think that it's just about timing. It's about Detroit being on the map. It's about the success we continue to have. It's not that one particular event has done the work. It's a series of events that have just continued. For we have actually, we were on our in marketing. We were talking about, Detroit wins. We are winning, and it's good, and it's good for the community, and we continue to do that. And there's more coming. So hang tight. You're going to hear some really amazing wins coming in the future.
Okay, looking forward to it. So, I wanted to zoom out a little bit, talk a little bit about your perception of kind of the industry and then where we're at, and just anything that keeps you up at night. Wanted to hear your concerns for anything that's happening specifically in business events.
Well, there's a lot, I'd like to think I sleep pretty good, but there are definitely some things that keep me up. I will say personally, in my like currently today, it's the volume, it's the intensity, it's the shorter time frames, it's the quick turns. It's making sure that you're meeting expectations in what I believe is a more condensed timeline with higher expectations. I hate to go back to to the term post pandemic, but this post pandemic era, um, things have changed, and I don't know that you can put your finger on just one thing, but I find that we are past the rebook stage. Everyone seems to be back in their traditional booking patterns, but there is still a need to meet, and it came back with a vengeance. There is no question that the industry is here to meet, to hold events, to have experiences, engage in person, and it's great. It's the demand that's coming in and being able to meet everyone's expectations in a timely manner. Um, that I think expectations is a really good conversation and probably a whole nother podcast because it has changed, right? The way we do business has looks different. Um, Event planners and organizations are contracting different. They are asking for different things, which is great because we're evolving. And then destinations and partners, they have their own expectations of what that looks like. And I've seen more than ever collaboration. I think everyone comes to the table with here's what I have, here's what you have. How do we make this work? And that's my favorite part. Sometimes we say the pendulum swings where it's a buyer's market or it's a supplier's market, but I really do believe we're in a very happy medium, that it's about finding mutually beneficial ways to work together and really being collaborative in that effort. What else keeps me up?
Well, let's shift over to kind of the positive side or the more exciting side. What are you most excited about?
Ooh, I think I'm most excited about the best is yet to come. There is an elevated, well deserved, long overdue interest in our city and in the industry. I think there's a lot of cool things going on. I'm most excited to see how events evolve with certainly technology. And I think experiences. That's probably the one that I get the biggest question about is, how can we make this event different and reinventing it? There's some core pieces that are essential to every event, but I think the most exciting part and the one I get thrilled about is when somebody says, I want to change it up. What can we do? And I love that because I have very creative people that I work with, and they're always willing to be challenged with something new and present something very cool and out of the box for the customer.
Following on from that thought, if we think about events in, let's say, 6 years, 2030, do
Mm.
you think that the events in 2030, the creative events, let's say in 2030, will look different to events today?
I don't think they're going to look different, but there's going to be different elements. There's no doubt that AI will play a role. Advanced technology will continue to get better. Um, I think that, again, the core basics of we're going to need to meet, eat, and we need the logistics to do that will stay the same. But the content, the experiences, and how you make people feel will continue to evolve. And how we do that, we'll see. I think it's only getting better. That's for sure. I mean, every industry event I go to, that's a big topic. How do we make it bigger, better? How does AI play a role? What technology are you using? How are you attracting customers? Um, it'll be interesting, but I think technology, I do think it'll look different. I think they're going to be more elaborate. I feel like they're becoming more productions, uh, so AV will certainly play a role, technology will play a role, and experiences for sure. They're only going to get bigger and better.
That keyword experiences, absolutely. So, if you could change anything, any one thing in the industry, what would that be?
Man, that is a good question. I would
It's
have to say time to do all of this. And I think planners alike, suppliers alike, we just need more time. If I could slow time down just a little bit. But other than that, this is the best industry in the world. I don't know that there's anything else I would change. You know, it's unique, and that's what makes it special, so I wouldn't change that, but if I had more time and, longer lead times to execute all the things that we are being asked to do, I think we'd all like that. I know I'm speaking to the planners too, because I have no doubt their direction comes down and then it trickles down, and I'm sure they look at some of it and go, "Holy cow, I don't know how we're gonna make this work," but we always do, because that's what this industry is about.
well, hopefully some of that AI magic can give everybody a little bit more time. Right?
Exactly, exactly.
Andrea, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Wanted to get your recommendation for our next guest on the podcast, for someone else that we should speak to here on the Skiff Meetings podcast.
Well, specific to Visit Detroit, I would say it would be imperative to speak with Harriet Carter, our VP of Convention Services and Membership, because it's one thing to sell the event. It's one thing to get a confirmed event. But a convention services team is so critical to implementing the logistics and expectations that have been presented. They are they are the magic makers. And there's no doubt that they are well in tune to what is happening on a local level. And they are the experts to help bring both the event coordinators, the sales team, and all that we have all agreed upon to bring that to light. So I think that's the natural progression is once you book an event in a city, there's a whole nother team that comes on board to help make it all happen.
And to wrap up, what would you say to planners out there who may be considering Detroit? Maybe they're not. Maybe it's on the list. Maybe it's not. What would you say to push them over the edge?
Well, if today wasn't enough, no, I'm kidding. I think that it's most important for people who have any thoughts about coming to Detroit to come and experience it. We have a couple of things that we like to say is, when you meet in Detroit, you get to meet Detroit. And it's just really imperative that you come with an open mind, because I think you'll be very surprised at any preconceived notions of what you may have had for Detroit are just not there. And there are very, very few people who come into this city who don't fall in love with it. I have customers that have clients that have moved here, that have come back to vacation, and who have become long-term ambassadors of the city because they know now what we've known for a long time.
Excellent message. I think it'll hopefully put Detroit on the consideration map for many
I
different
hope so.
planners.
I hope so.
Andrea, pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast and thank you for being with us today. We do appreciate it. And best of luck for PCMA EduCon coming up in a couple of weeks. And talk to you soon.
Thank you, Miguel. Have a great day.